here, particularly into the west. And showers can't be completely ruled out for northern England and southern Scotland. But for most places, Thursday, a bit warmer. Temperatures in the south over 20 Celsius with quite a bit of sunshine. There's that high pressure trying to topple in, bringing drier weather for most, but still the threat of these weather fronts providing some showers across the south.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there, it's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Brazier. Fast-paced news from 4 until 6. In the next hour, thousands of passengers at airports across the UK continue to face delays and cancellations today as the industry struggles to cope with the demands of the bank holiday. Around 2 million people set to fly over the coming weekend. We've got advice from Sean Tipton from the Travel Association, ABTA, in a few moments. Also, record pump prices at petrol stations, with the average diesel car now costing more than £100 to fill up. £44 of that is in tax. The Conservative MP and chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, Craig McKinley, will have his say. Our debate this hour: should the UK bring back Imperial measurements? The British Retail Consortium is warning Boris Johnson that his plan to bring back the weight system will push up the price of goods because products would need relabelling. The Prime Minister says it'll be a post-Brexit benefit. And are you in a Jubilee frenzy? Is your street festooned with patriotic bunting? If so, we would love to hear from you. We'd like to see pictures, please, of your house, whatever it is you put the bunting up on. Videos and pictures, please, too, of your Jubilee decorations. We'll attempt to share them at the end of the show. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. With me for the next 2 hours, the commentator Lynn May. But first, the latest news headlines with Polly.
Colin, thank you. The top stories on GB News. The Chancellor says that the plan unveiled last week to help with the cost of living crisis will make an enormous difference for the most vulnerable households. Consumer group Which says more than 1 in 10 people have skipped meals due to rising food prices. And they say surging living costs mean 57% of people are having to make adjustments, including cutting back on essentials, taking out loans or borrowing from friends and family. Rishi Sunak says he's aware that these are difficult times, but believes that millions of families across the country will benefit from the support put in place.
Last week we announced £15 billion of new support to help with the cost of living, with a third of all households, the most vulnerable, receiving around £1,200 in help. But there's also support available for everyone, including £400 off energy bills in the autumn. We said we would stand by the British people through this challenging time, and that's what we delivered last week.
In other news today, the president of the EU Council says their ban on Russian oil will cripple Vladimir Putin's war machine. The EU has agreed to stop 90% of oil imports by the end of this year. 10% of imports will temporarily be exempt, so Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic can still have access. A senior Ukrainian official has argued the sanctions don't go far enough. But European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen says they're destroying Moscow's economy.
Most importantly, in the back is, of course, the whole big package of 6 sanctions. And these sanctions are biting hard and are really destroying, and that's the goal, the basis, the financial basis of Putin leading this war and hitting hard the Russian economy.
Well, here at home, a Conservative MP says he's taken the appropriate action to facilitate a confidence vote in the Prime Minister. John Stevenson says continuing criticism, revelations and questions are debilitating for the government. Earlier, former Cabinet Minister Andrea Leadsom told constituents that unacceptable failings of leadership found in Sue Gray's Partygate report cannot be tolerated and are the responsibility of the Prime Minister. TUI Airways have announced they're cancelling 6 flights a day from Manchester Airport until the end of next month. EasyJet and British Airways have also been cancelling flights, while passengers at airports like Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester and Bristol are reporting long delays. The aviation industry is suffering from staff shortages after thousands were let go during the pandemic. The Shadow Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, says the government didn't ensure airports had the required staff levels.
Look, the government have been warned many months ago that losing skilled workers from the aviation industry would cause significant delays when people started going back on holiday. They knew that airports did not have the staff for security, for ground control, for cabin crew, and they knew that people would be going on holiday over the half term. So it's simply not good enough that people are having to wait hours and hours to get through security, and in some instances missing their flights and their holidays entirely.
Well, we contacted the government and they said they've changed the law over training new employees, which should help the industry fill vacancies more quickly. But it made clear that the aviation industry was responsible for making sure itself that it has enough staff, and said the sector must step up its recruitment drive. Avon and Somerset Police is the only force in the UK meeting their targets of answering 90% of 999 calls in under 10 seconds. Data released by the Home Office shows 43 other forces failed to do this in the 6 months to April. Assistant Chief Constable Alan Todd says police deal with 12 million emergency calls a year, with a large number inappropriately using the system.
There are too many calls to police services right across the UK that are either prank calls or hoax calls or just inappropriate use of the 999 system. This is not unique to policing, this is a case for all emergency services, but that is a high level of calls. So, responsible use, people being responsible by the use of the 999 system and only using it where appropriate would actually help us deliver a better service to people who need it.
At least 280 people have crossed the English Channel today in 8 small boats. After a lull in small boat activity in recent days due to bad weather in the Channel, the first boats were spotted just after 6 a.m. GB News producer in Dover reporting around 50% of those were taken off the vessels and were from the country of Albania. Almost 10,000 people have crossed the Channel so far this year. That's significantly higher than this time last year. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now it's time for Brazier.
Well, half-term misery, well and truly. Many UK holidaymakers currently facing widespread disruption at UK airports. EasyJet has cancelled more than 200 flights over the half-term period, while TUI passengers, especially at Manchester Airport, they had to wait for some 8 hours to check in. That was on Saturday, only for their trips to be subsequently cancelled. There are calls for the government to step in to stop airlines from selling flights they will not be able to provide. The industry is blaming staff shortages for the delays and cancellations. I've just read an article that seemed to blame passengers for not being ready when they join a queue. We'll reflect on that and the rest of what makes up this story with Sean Tipton, spokesman for the Travel Association, ABTA. Sean, welcome to you. Blame never lies fully in one direction, does it? But who cops for most of it, do you think?
Well, it's a whole mixture of things, Colin. I mean, I just want to dispute actually about the length of queues, because I've spoken to airports all throughout these, obviously this is a big story, isn't it? And quite rightly so. And the majority are saying the queues aren't anywhere near as bad as is being reported. They really aren't. I mean, you'd expect to see more people queuing at busy times of year, such as half-term, etc. And yes, you're quite right. There is an issue with staffing. But at the same time, people are getting through security in most cases, I think 80%, one airport told me, in under 20 minutes. So I think it's very much a mixed bag. The problem we are seeing, though, because obviously there is so much attention to this issue, a lot of people are getting to the airport much earlier than they need to. So you should really check that with the airport, all the airline concerned, take their advice. And they're saying to me that you should get there no more than 2.5 to 3 hours before departure. And that should not be a problem at that point. But if people are getting there as they are, 6 or 7 hours before departure, that is causing problems. It's
got a problem with crowd control, don't you, Sean?
Services. So I won't deny there's no problems at all. Because clearly there are some. We can't have travel reopening for the first time after 2.5 years of virtually got a standstill and have no issues whatsoever. And I think at certain airports, certainly over Easter rather than half term, there were problems, and that was definitely down to staffing levels. But they have been addressing that. The government is saying that they gave the industry some support. Well, there was limited support. I think that's fair to say, but it was pretty limited. But what we made very clear to the government was opening travel is not just like turning on a tap. You need a bit of warning. And we did get, travel reopened very, very quickly. So I think it was inevitable there were going to be some issues along the way. But if you're, if you're watching now and if you're due to be travelling off in the next few weeks and over the summer, I would say that it's pretty unlikely that you're going to see, really chaotic scenes at airports. You should leave a little bit of extra time. But I'd always recommend that anyway.
Sean, thanks for that. I think you've brought some useful perspective there, and I suspect the 8 hours is absolutely worst-case scenario, and we pesky journalists sometimes present the worst-case scenario as if it's the norm, and plainly it's not, and certainly a couple of people I know who've flown in the last 2 or 3 days reported absolutely no problems at all. Just in terms of the other point I raised in that introduction, that idea, and it's a point of natural justice, really, that people get seriously irked when they turn up, they paid for a flight, it's cancelled. I paid for it, it's cancelled. They just don't get it, and it feels deeply unjust.
I think, Colin, I'd agree with you on that. I mean, airlines should not be cancelling flights unless they've got good reason to do so. Now, one of the things that is there to protect people is a regulation called Regulation 261, came in 2004, actually in response to the stringent obligations on airlines that if they cancelled a flight, they had to do various things. For example, they have to do their best to provide you with an alternative flight and do that pretty quickly. It could actually be with another airline. It doesn't need to necessarily be with them. They have to do that. If they can't provide that to your satisfaction, they have to give you your money back. If they cancel the flight less than 14 days before you're due to travel, and that's what we're seeing in most cases here, then they also have to pay you pretty hefty compensation, unless the replacement flight is only 2 or 3 hours after the original flight. So, and talk about that. That compensation on a short-haul flight is £220 a person. So if you had a family of 5, let's say, who were in that position, and the new flight was 3 hours or more than their original flight, that's getting off for £1,000 compensation. Also, I saw a story of a family where their flight was cancelled because it was overbooked, and that doesn't happen so much anymore, but it did happen in their case. And they were told by the airline, look, we can get you out tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And they said, that's not good enough, we'd rather go home. Well, if they'd accepted that offer, the airline would be obliged to pay for their hotel overnight, pay for their dinner, because they have to pay for refreshments, etc., and pay them compensation and get them out. So I think what's incredibly important is that people are aware of what their rights are if you're in that position. Now, even though you're quite right, there are hundreds of flights that have been cancelled, if you look at the total, it's actually a fairly small percentage of the total. I know that's not a consolation if you're one of those people, but just to show that you're not likely to be in that
again, Sean, it's good perspective. No, it's good context. Look, yesterday around at this time, I was talking to the Sun's travel editor, and I was asking her whether she felt that COVID had left an irrevocable mark on your industry, whether there were people who'd, in the dog days of lockdown, had looked at the aviation sector and thought, you know what, this has not got a long-term future, I'm going to take my trade elsewhere. And we know that some of the airlines, some of the airports are struggling to get things like baggage handlers in the numbers that they need at the wages they can afford. Do you think there is now going to be a permanent shortage as a consequence of lockdown and COVID in this sector?
It's going to be interesting, Colin, because I think it's fair to say that large sections of the travel industry are not terribly well paid. Certainly in my sector, travel agents and tour operators, certainly when you start off in the industry, money's not great, but it's a very friendly industry. You can get promotions, a very good, you can move up the chain pretty quickly. And also there are benefits such as very cheap holidays. But I know that we're looking at, paying people more money to attract the best quality staff. So I think that might be, in a funny way, a long-term benefit for people working in the industry, that the money will be better. Because I think that's the way you attract staff, isn't it? Good terms and conditions, but also decent money. So I think that, haven't got much choice in that one, really. If you want to have an operation that runs smoothly, and obviously that's important if you're going to attract customers, you need to make sure you have the staff there to do their jobs.
Sean, good to talk to you as always. Thanks very much indeed. Sean Tipton from ABTA there. Lynn May is alongside me today. Lynn, any thoughts on this one? I thought interesting note of caution about the way we report this story from Sean. What do you think?
I think, to be honest, I take a balanced approach on it, because I think everyone is slightly to blame. I think there's a massive backlog with applications with regards to DBS checks. We know that in aviation, there needs to be a level of security, and it's gone from about 6 weeks to 3 months. So,
but we don't anybody baggage handling, do we?
Exactly, but the government should have seen this coming, and they should have done something about this in terms of whether it was a fast-track approach. There are cases, because I have to have a DBS for work, and in emergencies you can fast-track that. So that's something the government should have really looked at. I think also with aviation to just point the finger at the government, I don't think that's fair either. Worldwide, they've received over 100 billion. In the UK alone, over 7 billion, and they should also have seen this coming, whether it be with staffing. Airports knew this was coming, knew the rush was coming. And I think, like I said, it's everyone's fault a bit. And when people say, oh, this is Brexit, it is happening in multiple countries. Yeah. It's not just here. No, and it's important to note that.
That's a really good point. Lynn, for now, thanks very much indeed. And on kind of related to that, the price at the pumps continues to rise. The AA suggesting it will now cost you more than £100 to fill up the average diesel car, fuel prices reaching record levels. A tank of petrol will set you back on average £95. Figures from the Department for Business suggest drivers in the UK paying more in taxes per litre of petrol, that in spite of Rishi Sunak's 5p fuel duty cut in March this year. The chuckling you can hear off camera is Lynn May. Joining me now, the Conservative MP for South Thanet and chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, Craig McKinley. Mr McKinley, appreciate your time today. Thanks very much indeed. Average diesel car, £100 to fill up, of which £45 goes to the taxman, for heaven's sake.
No, absolutely right. I was doing some calculations actually this morning. Bit of a sort of back of an envelope one. The Chancellor or the Treasury, one way or another, gets at current prices about £1.80 a litre for diesel, of 82.95 pence out of that £1.80 for the litre is going to the Treasury. And strange enough, even though that 5 pence duty reduction came in, I'm not sure that any of us really saw it. And I think that is the root of concern. Fair Fuel UK, which is a body that I do some work with, have done some analysis with some other industry figures, and they're finding that the profit per litre, where it was historically up until about 2018 about 9 pence per litre, it is now approaching 19 pence per litre. So is there profiteering going on? I've been trying to go through the supply chain to see where that is. Is it the...
Well, Craig, don't bother going through the supply chain. I know we always use that word profiteering in the context of private companies, the retailers, the supermarkets, the people who run the petrol forecourts. It's the government that's profiteering.
Absolutely right. No, there's no doubt about that. Hence my opposition to an additional energy profits levy, windfall tax last week, because the government is doing very, very well out of these increased prices, even though the fuel duty came down, there's VAT on everything, VAT on the wholesale price, the retail price, and even the duty in between. So even at these prices, and reducing the duty level, the government is doing just as well as it did when fuel prices were around about 140 or 150. Add to that the profits that the big companies are earning, the Treasury is getting another 8 billion, and that's before this extra 25% levy taking the tax rate up to 65%, which I think under any reckoning is just penal. So the government's got 8 billion out of the super profits. It's doing very well out of the fuel duty and VAT at the pump. And of course, there's about another 1.5 billion from us as householders on the 5% VAT, because all our prices have gone up by that extra amount, and will possibly, maybe, hopefully not, but looks likely go up even further come the autumn. So there is a windfall already. And I've been saying for some time, well, you don't need another windfall tax, because I think that makes international businesses look at Britain and go, well, I'm not entirely sure.
And Craig McKinley, I'm with you. I think you've got a point about the message it sends out to businesses if you start deciding that profits are only ever provisional. But just on the point about the average diesel car, £100, the people that have been the victims of this profiteering, it is the small business people, it is white van man, the people already struggling, it is the mums and dads doing school runs. It is people who live in rural areas who need a car to get to work, to go about their business. These are the people who've been victimised by this.
Well, we've had a sort of war on the motorists for a very, very long time, whether that's private parking companies that just seem to want to levy fines, whether it's low traffic neighbourhoods, which many councils have introduced, cycle lanes that nobody use, and of course, the likelihood of getting snapped by a camera, which again has gone up massively over the last couple of years. But now, on layering on top of all that, we've got very, very high fuel prices. I mean, I had that experience the other day at a self-service petrol station. You put your credit card in, there's nobody there, but it will only dispense, I say only, £99. And in my car, an old Mercedes, it barely touched the sides, frankly. My old 2004 Mercedes takes about £130 or slightly more to fill. Now these are draconian there, and I think there is room in the tax system. There's room in the public finances to actually try and soften that. My worry is, do the retailers just bank it? Because I think that was the worry with that 5% cut. I'm not entirely sure they didn't just bank it. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, Colin, but you sometimes go down a road and you'll have two different retailers, other side of the road from each other, and hey presto, the price is the same.
I know. It's off. There's sometimes there's a
one of the garages has got it at a cheaper price. So
there's a whiff of the cartel about it.
We've got a very fair and even-handed market.
Craig McKinley, we've got to leave it there, but now might be the time to look into trading in that old Mercedes for something bigger, smaller and cheaper. But actually, the second-hand market's booming, so maybe you better stick with it. Thanks very much indeed. Lynn May's alongside me to reflect on pain at the pumps.
Yeah, well, I think people watching this are going to think that sounded quite painful, where he actually said the government are doing very well out of this. And for a time where we are struggling, like you said, the men in the vans, people driving a lot, and it's not just people that just want to, drive around for the sake of it. People have livelihoods where they need to drive. People have, disabled family members, they need to drive. And again, like he said, there is a war on motorists at the moment. I used to put 70 quid in my car, it's now £100. So now what's going to happen is, in order for there to be growth, people need to spend, but people are going to start holding back now. They're going to say, do I need to take that trip? Do I need to go to that bar? And restaurants, bars, town centres, they're going to suffer.
Lynn, for now, thanks very much indeed. This afternoon, another Conservative MP submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. It takes a total of those publicly calling on Boris Johnson to resign to 28. In a statement posted on social media, John Stevenson, MP for Carlisle since 2010, said he was deeply disappointed by rule-breaking parties in Downing Street. A confidence vote in Boris Johnson's leadership will be held if 54 letters from 15% of Conservative MPs are received by Graham Brady, chairman of the 1922 Committee of Backbench MPs. Speculation this number could be reached if, as seems likely, there are more letters which haven't been declared publicly. Let's turn to Tom Harwood, our political correspondent. Tom, welcome to you. You might want to talk about John Stevenson. Can I talk about Andrea Leadsom, who's not written or submitted a letter, so far as we know, but has tentatively publicly criticised the Prime Minister, and that feels quite a big deal, certainly to me, for somebody who was such a high-profile face of the Brexit process, a big participant in the televised debates on Brexit, coming out against the Prime Minister.
Yes, it does feed into this feeling of momentum, really, that wasn't there last week, that wasn't there in the initial aftermath of the publication of the Sue Gray report, which wasn't so damning of the Prime Minister, but was fairly damning of what went on in Number 10. Of course, not every party involved the Prime Minister. The most debaucherous ones certainly didn't involve the Prime Minister. But what is now being criticised is the culture of Downing Street, and that the person at the top of Downing Street should in some way be responsible for that culture. And if junior staff have a debaucherous party during lockdown, well, the person at the top must take the rap. That seems to be the argument of many people who are now coming forward who hadn't been so critical before. It's hard now to argue that this is somehow a Remainer coup against the Prime Minister when you have people like Andrea Leadsom, when you have people like Andrew Bridgen coming forward with their criticism. However, I think that the most important point is one that you raised in your introduction, Colin, which is 28 public letters, yes. But it's not the public letters that matter. Of course, we know how secretive this process is. If we cast our minds back to December 2018, when the requisite number of letters was reached for Theresa May, and that no confidence motion went forward and was voted on, the public number of letters was not above 50. It was down at around 30. And so there were around 20 letters that hadn't been made public that actually really did matter. And when we're looking at this situation now, that seems to be what Number 10 is particularly concerned about. Boris Johnson now doing the ring round of sceptical MPs. That, to some extent, does suggest that the whips, that the people supporting Boris Johnson, that are holding his position firm, now suspect that the number is getting very close.
And you know what, Tom? I suspect some of those letters will be from Tory MPs who aren't actually that miffed about Partygate. They think it's a bit of sound and fury signifying nothing. They're miffed about the sorts of things we've just been talking about. The fact that it now costs £100 to fill up the average diesel car. Tom, for now, thanks very much indeed. Tom Harwood there in Westminster. Coming up here, GB News has been told that plans to send hundreds of asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire. Those plans being delayed following a legal challenge. The delay a blow to the Home Office as they battle an accommodation crisis. More from Mark White coming up. Back in a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
you will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
£4 you with Colin Brazier on GB News on TV and on radio. GB News has been told that plans to send hundreds of asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire are being delayed after a legal challenge. The first of up to 1,500 asylum seekers were due to arrive at RAF Linton-on-Ouse this week. The delay, a blow for the Home Office, which is struggling with a growing accommodation crisis. GB News can exclusively reveal that up to 30,000 hotel rooms are being requisitioned by them every day to house asylum seekers as they wait for their claims to be processed. Locals in Linton-on-Ouse have told our Home and Security editor, Mark White, the plans are ill thought out and will end in disaster.
On the seafront in Eastbourne, this hotel would normally be home to some of the many tourists who visit this East Sussex resort. But these guests are not holidaymakers. They're asylum seekers, some of the tens of thousands who are currently placed in hotel accommodation. It's an understandably sensitive issue. As we filmed, this Home Office minder filmed us. Another tried to persuade the guests to go back inside. And as I tried to speak to some of them, I was told I couldn't.
They are not allowed to speak. They are guests.
Well, they are allowed to speak.
No, they can't give any statement to you.
That's official. You're telling us on behalf of the Home Office that these people are not allowed to speak to us. Is that what you're telling us?
You can speak. They are not know English.
Yeah, well, exactly. Thank you. In broken English, the two men told me they were both 27 and from Iran, but wouldn't say how they got to the UK. We've been told that every day around 30,000 hotel rooms across the country are requisitioned by the Home Office to house asylum seekers. It's costing close to £5 million each day and is clearly unsustainable. This hotel near Bristol Airport, another where business travellers and holidaymakers are unable to book their rooms. And when they ask why, as John Northfield did, they're simply told to contact the Home Office.
I actually booked it through booking.com, and they said if I wanted an explanation I would have to try and contact the hotel direct, which I did try and do that, but obviously they weren't very forthcoming as to why the hotel was being closed for 12 months.
The need for radical solutions prompted the move to adapt this old RAF base at Linton-on-Ouse in North Yorkshire for use as an accommodation centre. But its close proximity to the village of Linton-on-Ouse has enraged locals like Catherine Dryden, who fears that an influx of bored young men is just asking for trouble.
They are going to be bored out of their skulls. There is no infrastructure in this village. We're a very small, tight-knit community. Yes, we will be welcoming them and speak to them, absolutely not a problem, but that is not enough. What are these people going to do?
Despite the understandable local anxiety, if the government can make a success of the asylum accommodation centre here, it could pave the way for other similar camps. You only need to walk through the centre of this village to see exactly what locals fear in terms of their community being completely overrun. It's tiny. The main street here has one shop and not much else. So with the prospect of hordes of young men hanging around here, the concern is understandable. Those worries are being compounded by several incidents of concern in some areas where asylum seekers have been housed, including this one in Windsor, where a group of schoolgirls videoed as they were propositioned by a couple of asylum seekers.
You know we're 15?
Yeah, how old are you?
21.
You know we're 15?
Who? Us.
Oh my! Oh my, we're 15!
She likes me!
You're 21 and you're asking for our snaps, we're 15.
Walk on, bruv, walk on. They're young girls, brother, walk on.
Thames Valley Police has confirmed it's investigating this incident. Olga Matthias, who's campaigned against the Linton-on-Ouse centre, believes it's been ill thought out and will end in disaster.
Something appalling, or several appalling somethings, will happen. The Home Office has no track record of successfully delivering any policy that they've invented. And I use the word invented deliberately because this has definitely not been thought through.
The issue of where to accommodate the growing number of asylum seekers is a major headache for the government. Last month, every local authority in the country became part of the National Dispersal Scheme, which will see even more of their housing stock used to accommodate asylum seekers. The pressure on housing stock, on hotels, the need to adapt old military bases will continue as long as the small boats keep coming across the channel. And for the moment at least, there's no end in sight to that. Mark White, GB News.
I'll talk to Mark White in the next hour about that story. It's a terrific piece of work by Mark. Lynn May is my guest today. Lynn, I think lots of people whose homes border old MOD sites will be a bit nervous at the moment. I think there's a difference between what you're seeing in Linton-on-Ouse, a very, very small community, brilliant use of a drone there to show just how small an area we're talking about, compared to asylum seekers being put up in hotels in the centres of big cities. That's different.
Yeah, and I think, again, I like to take a balanced approach, as you know, and I think before anyone wants to get angry at these individuals, if you had an awful life in your country, your aim would be to have a better life. However, their values, their morals, their principles are going to be extremely different. So the people in that area have every right to be concerned because, as he said, their English is not the best. There is no process of saying these are our values. You cannot teach someone values in such a short space of time, as you saw with some of those men speaking to 15-year-old girls. And I'd like to raise the point that in many of those countries, if there were Western groups of people going to those countries and wanting to live there, they would not be happy because the ideals are different. Especially in certain Muslim countries, wanting to, whether it's drink or wear certain clothes, they would be unhappy. So I think that the government need to really look at this and see how this is actually going to cause more racial tensions because of these issues.
But once these people are in the country, they've got to be processed. And, you know, you raised some really important points there, but the point is the boats keep coming, the people keep coming, they've got to go somewhere. I'll leave that question hanging. We'll be talking to Mark White in the next hour. Lynn May, thanks very much indeed. Coming up next, in today's Brazier angle, I'll give my take on Tony Blair's toxic legacy. 25 years on from his election win to become Prime Minister. Well, it's the same month, May 1997. And I'll debate this hour. Should the UK bring back Imperial measurements? The British Retail Consortium is warning Boris Johnson that his plan to bring back the weight system will actually push up the price of goods because products would need relabelling. First, let's bring you the latest news headlines with Polly.
Colin, thank you. A quick update on the latest top stories on GB News. The Chancellor says that the plan unveiled last week to help with the cost of living crisis will make an enormous difference for the most vulnerable households across the UK. The consumer group, Which, says more than 1 in 10 people have skipped meals due to rising food prices. Rishi Sunak says he is aware these are difficult times, but believes millions of families across the country will benefit from the support put in place.
Last week we announced £15 billion of new support to help with the cost of living, with a third of all households, the most vulnerable, receiving around £1,200 in help. But there's also support available for everyone, including £400 off energy bills in the autumn. We said we would stand by the British people through this challenging time, and that's what we delivered last week.
In other news, the president of the EU Council says their ban on Russian oil will cripple Vladimir Putin's war machine. The EU has agreed to stop 90% of oil imports by the end of this year. 10% of imports will be temporarily exempt, so Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic will still have access. Meanwhile, Ukraine says Russian forces now have control of around half of the eastern city of Severodonetsk in the Luhansk region. The head of the city's administration told state TV that Ukrainian troops are putting up a fierce fight against Russia's all-out assault. Much of the city's infrastructure is facing heavy bombardment and thousands of civilians are still trapped. TUI Airways have announced they're cancelling 6 flights a day from Manchester Airport until the end of next month. EasyJet and British Airways are cancelling flights every day, while passengers at airports like Heathrow, Gatwick and Manchester and Bristol are reporting long delays. The aviation industry is suffering from staff shortages after thousands were let go during the pandemic. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. Brazier's here in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Just time for our top stories coming up to 20 to 5. GB News has been told that plans to send hundreds of asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire are being delayed after a legal challenge by the local authority. The first of up to 1,500 asylum seekers were due to arrive at RAF Linton-on-Ouse this week, the Home Office confirming the department still wants to go ahead with the plans. Mark White will tell you about that in an hour. Thousands of holidaymakers have been left in limbo at airports across the UK again as more flights were cancelled ahead of the bank holiday. The airline TUI says staff shortages are forcing them to cancel half a dozen flights a day until the end of June. 2 million people set to fly over the bank holiday, one of the busiest periods so far this year. And another Conservative MP submitted a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson, making him the 28th Tory to publicly call for the Prime Minister to go over the Partygate scandal and other things. John Stevenson, the MP for Carlisle, says he's been deeply disappointed in the rule-breaking parties at number 10 and the Prime Minister's response to Parliament. Talk this week that Tony Blair wants to be Prime Minister again. He's not too old. Joe Biden became president at 78. Blair is only 69. But if age doesn't disqualify the former Labour leader from re-election, does his record? In my opinion, his legacy is toxic. Not just the Iraq War. His critics saw that was a disaster even before the tanks went in. No, Tony Blair's real bequest to Britain has taken time to crystallise. Blair left a landmine under the landscape of British politics, and though he lit the fuse during his decade in office, it's taken longer for the shockwaves to spread. Years for us to fully comprehend that a man who presented himself as a moderate actually used his centrist image as camouflage to alter Britain as profoundly as Jeremy Corbyn might have done. He announced that Labour was no longer a hard left party by ditching Clause 4 of the party's constitution, but doing away with Clause 4 didn't stop him introducing 4 policies that, in my view, changed our country forever and for the worse. The first policy, landmine, came right at the start. Blair came to power in 1997, 25 years ago this month, in fact. That year, he set in motion a process we've come to call devolution. He thought that by giving politicians in Scotland and Wales more responsibility, he would halt those who wanted to partition our United Kingdom in their tracks. Instead, and with a predictability someone as clever as Blair ought to have foreseen, the genie was out of the bottle. Devolution wasn't a brake, it was an accelerator. Nobody has done more to break up the most successful political union in history than Tony Blair. In another age, he'd have been tried, frankly, for treason. The second policy landmine was the target Blair set for half of all young people to go to university. He said that in a global, knowledge-based economy, only highly educated societies would flourish. The trouble was that you can't buck the market. Just because lots of graduates felt they deserved well-paid jobs didn't mean those jobs existed. Young people were left with mountains of debt, acting as a block on things like family formation, and by expanding the higher education sector, we effectively created a gigantic new department for social engineering. Universities are uniformly woke, and they encourage groupthink on a scale unprecedented in recent British history. The expansion of university education worsened an existing trend among Britons who thought that some jobs were beneath them. Blair's solution? To allow immigration on a scale never seen before. His decision to ditch transitional arrangements when Eastern European countries joined the EU saw hundreds of thousands of new arrivals, even though the government predicted only a handful, with the inevitable consequences for public services. One of Blair's advisers later admitted that there was a secret policy to force multiculturalism on Britain through mass immigration and to, quote, rub the right's nose in diversity. Well, if the expansion of universities created an army of would-be woke warriors, it was the Equalities Act which gave them the weapons they needed to fight the culture wars. The Equalities Act was passed after Blair had left office, but it was written into his 2005 manifesto. By introducing the idea of so-called protected characteristics, the Equality Act set about creating the conditions for what we've come to call identity politics. The idea that you will be judged not by your individual character, but by your group label. Well, anyone flirting with the idea of Blair, Mark II, ought to consider those 4 disastrous policies. By Blair's own admission, he was often naive in office. In his, I have to say, quite brilliant autobiography, Blair admits he got many things wrong. But I wonder if he really understands how deep the wounds he inflicted on this country really are. Lynn May is my studio guest. Tony Blair, strong feelings or not?
Do you know what? We're seeing the effect of what you said with regards to universities right now. We're at a record level of vacancies. However, no one really wants to do those jobs. And it's for those reasons that you mentioned earlier.
Did he falsely raise people's aspirations?
100%. And not only that, he actually took away people's pride in having those, blue-collar jobs. Once upon a time, people were really proud to be in certain industries, and so they should have been. And those industries is what underpins us in terms of whether it be agriculture, whether it be, the trades. These are massively important.
And people
jobs.
say, well, those sectors were dying anyway. What he could have done, rather than expanding higher education, was the technical colleges, the stuff the Germans, for instance, do incredibly well, and then they're not seen, if you're a bricklayer, as doing a menial job. You're seen as doing an important job, and it is.
And exactly, and a lot of those people, earn phenomenal amounts. So why would we look down on those because, oh, what, you've got a degree? And what that's done is it's actually removed some of the quality and the kudos of degrees, and people are going to university, like you said, with loads of debt, not knowing what they actually want to do in university, but just have it there. And I used to work in welfare to work years ago, and I would have so many people on benefits with 1, 2, 3 degrees turning their nose up at various jobs because they thought that they were above it, but they would rather sit on the system and receive the benefits. And that is due to Tony Blair.
We've now got more vacancies in the economy than we have unemployed people.
Yes.
I know it's not as simple a match-up as that, but it's it's a striking figure, isn't it?
Exactly.
Lynn, thanks very much indeed. Let's move on then. It's time for our debate this hour. The government's set to launch a consultation on Friday looking at whether to bring back imperial measurements for trade by scrapping the EU law requiring the use of metric units. The move's been praised by some as a tangible expression of British sovereignty won by Brexit. But some retailers have warned that the updating of product labels may cause higher prices. So our question, should the UK bring back imperial measurements? Of course, some never went away. We're joined by Joe Harrison, CEO of the National Market Traders Federation, and Harry Mount, editor of The Oldie. Welcome to you both. Harry, you're pleased with this?
Yeah, delighted. For me, they never went away. I stayed 6 foot. I might have got slightly over 13 stone, but I've always thought of myself in those terms, and I'm 50.
Joe Harrison, in terms of National Market Traders, the federation you speak for, we think back to those metric martyrs, but that was the early 2000s, wasn't it? It feels like, given that metrification happened in, what was it, 1965, that this is an old war.
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways, but in reality and in legality, the traders could always display their measurements, both lots of measurements, and have been allowed to do so for a long time. But in my opinion, you know, to turn the clock back now since 1965 is somewhat a little ridiculous. And there is very few, and I know your other guest today is 50 years of age. Well, I'm almost 64, and I can remember the conversions and doing all the conversions and quite familiar to both systems. But quite frankly, the metric system is far easier and falls in line with a lot more of the European population as well. So why change it now? It's just a bit too far. A little bit of nostalgia, and I'm sure these people of my age group and older that would appreciate it in some ways because they'd understand it. But many people 50 and under would never have come across it.
How is it possible to make the case against decimalisation, or at least make the case for imperial measurements? I suppose you could argue, well, our biggest future potential if we get a trading partner, America, that they still use them. And there's a sort of logic to imperial measurements. You know, a foot, you can see what a foot is. It's generally speaking the size of a foot. It's based on anatomy very often and things you can see in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. And we've had metrication for quite a long time, for almost 60 years. But actually, a lot of those measures we're talking about, the imperial ones, predate the British Empire by thousands of years. So the foot goes back to the Roman foot, the pes, which is Latin for foot, the yard, the acre, those go back to the Anglo-Saxons. And there is a logic to them. They do sound more complicated in terms of the numbers than metrical numbers, but something like an acre was the amount of land that they thought that a man could till with a team of oxen in a day, and that sounds romantic. And none of us are doing that this today. They're not taking a team of oxen around a field, but those things go back thousands of years, and there is a natural association between, as you say, the foot, and if you're like me, 6 foot being 6 times the length of your foot, and there's a romantic aspect of these things going back so far. So take something like the pound. Many of your viewers will be familiar with the abbreviation LB for pound, but that goes right back to the Roman for pound, libra. That's where the L and the B come from. So there's a tremendous romance there, which isn't there in metrication. And also there is that strange logic, as you say, in relating it to anatomy and the way humans have behaved for thousands of years.
And Joe Harrison, the metrification never purged the English language of our fondness for imperial measurements, did it? I mean, people do not now say about a bouncing 4.5 kilogram baby just being born, do they?
No, they don't. But in real terms, and especially in business, the metric system has worked a great deal better. And as I say, the metric system is based on multiples or divisions of 10. So, in the end of the day, a century was also used by the Romans as well. So it meant 100 soldiers. But so there is argument, I'm sure, on both sides. I would think, quite frankly, if the imperial measurements were to be brought back, people should have the choice whether they sell or buy in either. I would think that's the answer. I mean, I get all the history side of things, but as far as simplification of arithmetic of people, adding, subtracting, dividing, the units of 10 are far easier. The 10 times table when I went to school was always the easiest one. So why change it now?
Joe Harrison, Harry Mann, that was really interesting. Thanks for your time, both. Thanks a lot. It's time for 5 to 5. It's not actually 5 to 5, but it's time for 5 to 5 as we discuss 5 things that you may need to know before 5 o'clock. At 5, a warning the NHS needs an extra 13,000 hospital beds to cope with current demand. A report from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine says the shortage is putting lives at risk. The UK lost almost 25,000 beds over the last 10 years. I wonder where they've gone, and is now behind the rest of Europe when it comes to bed availability in hospitals. At 4, the world's most famous piece of artwork, the Mona Lisa, vandalised by someone disguised as an old woman in a wheelchair. Video footage shared online shows the artwork in the Louvre being smeared with cake, the painting not damaged. Why are we giving you that full publicity? There we go. At 3, a royal superfan is making sure he doesn't miss any of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, arriving in London in plenty of time with his camping gear. John Loffrey is sleeping in a tent near Buckingham Palace wearing Jubilee-themed clothing. At 2, 4 primary schools in Wales are set to trial switching traditional protein sources during school meals like chicken and replacing them with insects. The workshops organised by scientists and teachers will aim to inform students of what they call the benefits of eating alternative protein. A study in the Journal of Cleaner Production found insect farms emit 75% less carbon than poultry farms. And at 1, doctors have called on Portsmouth Council to rethink a plan to install a pizza vending machine in Southsea. The machine planned for the D-Day Story Museum seafront car park provides pizzas 24 hours a day in under 4 minutes. Health campaigners say it'll increase the obesity problem in the area. Will it? Will it really? After 5:30 this afternoon, we'll speak to the man behind the vending machine and listen to what he's got to say. 5 things you might want to know before 5 o'clock this afternoon. Here's Lynn May to ponder on them. Lynn, what caught your ear, if anything?
Well, the alternative protein. Well, you've got some here. Are you going to try some?
I was hoping you wouldn't.
Are you going to try some?
Well, let me hold it up to the camera. Can the camera... Oh, there you go. This is the bit on live television where people get to eat something they don't really want. I note that Dan Wootton did this last night, apparently. So... You compared it to alternative...
You
don't need to...
chicken, poultry farms.
Yeah, that was during the commercial. I compared it to something less favourable during the commercial. It says, delicious fried, roasted or sprinkled on your favourite salad. They're ready to eat straight out of the pack. Do you want some?
You first, after you.
No, I'm not.
You're not going to try it?
I'm a great supporter of British farmers, and I think this stuff is a great big diversion by people who want to cripple British farming, which produces livestock. And when you grow livestock properly on land that's apt to grow one thing really well, namely grass, and you put your cows and your sheep on that grass, as we've done for thousands of years, it produces really great, nutritious food. And forcing primary school children to eat fried crickets.
Well, I'm certainly not going to be replacing that for...
Let me give them a proper... There you go. They've gone.
Can you imagine, for your roast dinner, cricket casserole or something?
Well, no. As a matter of fact, I can't.
We're not going to be doing that.
Anything else caught your eye there? You can either talk about the pizza vending machine, if that... We've done too much food already, I think, maybe.
I don't see there to be an issue with it.
That's it. Just leave it there. Leave it right there. What was our other stories there? Oh, we're getting lots of pictures in, which we're going to try and turn around for the end of the next hour. In fact, we can show some now. Glory be. We can show some now. We've been asking you, dear viewer and listener, for some of your pictures of homes, a little bit like Christmas, people decorating their homes with Christmas decorations, Jubilee bunting, etc. Let's have a look at what we've got. Can we show any of them? Oh, there was a cricket.
Come to
There was a
warn
cricket.
us.
Now, can you tell me where this is? This is quite nice. Anybody? Oh, show some more. Oliver Green in Dorset. Thank you, Oliver Green. Thanks for that. Very nice. Any more? Adrian Porter has sent in.
Ah.
It's a bit modest, Adrian. Could try. Oh, and Councillor Kathy Gray. I've got to be honest with you, Lynn.
You're not impressed?
I'm not. No, I'm not unimpressed. I'm slightly underwhelmed.
Underwhelmed.
I want a bit more. I mean, it's
No.
nice, and we appreciate you sending them in, folks, and keep them coming in. And we do want to encourage a bit of a bunting arms race.
Do you have any?
I ordered someone from the interweb yesterday.
Yeah?
And apologies, as always, if you are listening on radio, but you can imagine some Union flags on a string outside a house. Pretty much, that's it. How long have we got to the break? Got 30 seconds, just time for some of your views that have been coming in. We're going to be talking to Mark White, who's done a thought-provoking piece looking at the situation in Linton-on-Ouse, former RAF base, now home to many asylum seekers. Dave writes, there would be less of a problem in Yorkshire if these people were detained within the site. I don't think that's how it's going to work, Dave. I think they'll be allowed to wander on and off. Why should they be free to wander around where they like? What about the safety of locals? Keep your thoughts coming in. Lots coming in on Mark White's piece on asylum seekers being kept at Linton-on-Ouse. Do keep sharing your thoughts on that story and any pictures you've got of your bunting, your Jubilee celebrations. We'd like to see the pictures. If you can share them with us, it's the usual email address. More to come.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to Brazier. Coming up live at 5. Thousands of passengers at airports across the UK continue to face some delays as well as cancellations today as the industry struggles to cope with the demand approaching for the bank holiday. Some 2 million people set to fly over the weekend. The journalist and broadcaster Angela Epstein has been following the disruption at Manchester Airport. She'll join me in a tick. Also, GB News understands that plans to send up to 1,500 asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire have been put on hold following a legal challenge by the council. The latest with our Home and Security editor, who's got a fascinating piece, Mark White. Also this hour, found out why plans for a pizza vending machine is causing a row. There it is, in Portsmouth. And are you in a Jubilee frenzy? Is your street festooned with patriotic bunting? If so, we'd love to hear from you. Videos and pictures, please, of your Jubilee decorations, and we'll attempt to share them at the end of each show and paint a picture for our radio listeners too. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. And with me for the next 2 hours, the commentator Lynn May. But first, we've got the latest news headlines with Polly.
Colin, thank you. Good afternoon to you. The latest top stories. The Chancellor says the plan unveiled to help with the cost of living crisis will make an enormous difference to the most vulnerable households. The consumer group Which says over 10% of people have skipped meals due to rising food prices. They also say surging living costs mean 57% of people are having to make adjustments, including cutting back on some essentials, taking out loans or borrowing from friends and family. Rishi Sunak says he's aware times are difficult but believes millions of families across the country will benefit from the support put in place.
Last week we announced £15 billion of new support to help with the cost of living, with a third of all households, the most vulnerable, receiving around £1,200 in help. But there's also support available for everyone, including £400 off energy bills in the autumn. We said we would stand by the British people through this challenging time, and that's what we delivered last week.
In news away from home, the President of the EU Council says their ban on Russian oil will cripple Vladimir Putin's war machine. The EU has agreed to stop 90% of oil imports by the end of this year. 10% of imports will be temporarily exempt, so Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic can still have access. A senior Ukrainian official has argued the sanctions don't go far enough. But European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said they're destroying Moscow's economy. Meanwhile, Ukraine says Russian forces do now have control of around half of the eastern city of Severodonetsk in the Luhansk region. The head of the city's administration told state TV that Ukrainians are putting up a fierce fight against Russia's all-out assault. Much of the city's infrastructure is facing heavy bombardment and thousands of civilians are trapped. Here, a Conservative MP says he's taken the appropriate action to facilitate a confidence vote in the Prime Minister. John Stevenson says continuing criticism, revelations and questions are debilitating for the government. Earlier, former Cabinet Minister Andrea Leadsom told constituents that unacceptable failings of leadership found in Sue Gray's Partygate report can't be tolerated and are the responsibility of the Prime Minister. Her Majesty the Queen has returned to Windsor Castle in Berkshire from a short trip to Balmoral ahead of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Her Majesty travelled to her Scottish home last week as Buckingham Palace said she's pacing herself ahead of a busy 4-day weekend of festivities. The Queen's planned visit to Epsom for the Derby on Saturday is also reported to be unlikely, with the Princess Royal attending on her behalf. TUI Airways have announced they're cancelling 6 flights a day from Manchester Airport until the end of next month. EasyJet and British Airways have also been cancelling flights, while passengers at airports like Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester and Bristol are reporting long delays. The Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Hay says the government didn't ensure airports had the required staff levels after thousands were let go during the pandemic.
Look, the government have been warned many months ago that losing skilled workers from the aviation industry would cause significant delays when people started going back on holiday. They knew that airports did not have the staff for security, for ground control, for cabin crew, and they knew that people would be going on holiday over the half term. So it's simply not good enough that people are having to wait hours and hours to get through security, and in some instances missing their flights and their holidays entirely.
Well, GBNews got in touch with the government to respond to that, and they said they've changed the law over training new employees, which should help industry fill vacancies more quickly. But the point was made by the government that the aviation industry was also responsible for making sure they had enough staff, and said the sector must step up recruitment drives. At least 280 people have crossed the English Channel today in 8 small boats. After a lull in small boat activity in recent days due to bad weather in the Channel, The first boats were spotted just after 6 o'clock this morning. GB News producer in Dover reporting around 50 of those taken off the vessels were likely from Albania. Almost 10,000 people have crossed the channel so far this year alone. That's significantly higher than this time last year. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now, let's get more from Brazier.
Six minutes past 5. There's currently, well, there certainly has been pretty major disruption at British airports. Airlines cancelling scores of flights. At one stage, police called in to manage check-in queues full of angry passengers. More than 200 flights have been cancelled by EasyJet, for instance, over half-term, while TUI passengers at Manchester Airport, they had to queue for 8 hours. That was on Saturday, 8 hours, only for their trips to be subsequently cancelled. There are calls from the consumer group Which to stop airlines from selling flights they will not be able to provide. And they sometimes maybe, well, do they sell them and not know that's likely to happen or going to happen? Let's turn to the journalist and broadcaster Angela Epstein, who's in Manchester. Angela, welcome to you. Are you hearing stories about people at Manchester Airport, such a busy international airport, that's not having a very happy time of it right now?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's some extraordinary stories coming out of the airport. I was reading just before in one of our local papers that co-pilot was helping load some of the luggage on a flight that had been delayed 32 hours just to try and get things moving. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount of finger pointing. The government say it's the aviation industry say it's the government, other people say it's the passengers. I think we should acknowledge, first of all, Manchester is my local airport. This was an
Angela, I'm going to interrupt you. I hate to do this. It's just we're going to try to fiddle with the box outside the office and see if we can. The audio is terrible, so we'll try and get back to Angela Epstein. Lynn May's alongside me. That's been getting better. That's been happening less and less recently. Maybe we're squeezing the tubes more, and it's
with the connection?
Yeah, it's been better in recent weeks and months, which is great. But occasionally it happens. There is a problem, it seems, in Manchester in particular. But on the broader point about people or airlines feeling they can cancel flights that people have paid in good faith for, nothing irks people more, I would suggest.
Yeah, and I think Which is completely right. These huge airlines, they knew that they didn't have the staff. It's not just happened overnight, and yet they have been online promoting all these sales, book with us, your holiday's coming up, we're doing deals, and now they can't facilitate it. So I think this would be a good move if they stop doing that before they have enough staff.
I would just say, and I think it's worth pointing out in the interest of balance, we were talking to Sean Tipton, the spokesperson for ABTA, British Travel Agents Association, an hour ago. And he said, look, guys, I know there are some instances, you mentioned the one in Manchester, he said to me, but actually there's lots of good news stories. The volume of people travelling right now is enormous, he said, but actually in most instances in these regional airports, the big London airports, with the exception of Gatwick perhaps, things are going really, really well. Interesting corrective piece of context from him. We're going to move on in the absence of Angela Epstein. Apologies to her. Technology didn't quite work this one. So we're going to talk about this. The price of filling up a diesel car has reached a milestone that will cause much head shaking on the forecourts. The AA says the average diesel car costs more than £100 to fill up, £100 to fill up, or of that £100 figure, £45 is taken by the taxman. It follows the release of figures from the Department for Business that show Britain is paying more in taxes per litre of petrol, despite Rishi Sunak's 5p fuel duty cut earlier this year. Let's turn to the CEO of Fairfuel UK, Howard Cox. Howard, welcome to you. We've talked about that 5p Rishi Sunak cut not being passed on before, but this particular milestone makes it sound like it's something we approve of. Nobody does. £100 to fill up the average diesel car, heavens above.
Well, it's crippling people, Colin, and thank you for having me on your show again. Fundamentally, truckers, van drivers and people who drive diesel vehicles and petrol is not far behind. It's only 10p behind diesel. per litre. What we're seeing is actually a situation that could have been avoided by this government. Why haven't they actually jumped on the fuel supply chain to find out where did that 5p plus the 20% in VAT, so 6p, why haven't we seen that at the pumps? According to the REC, we've only seen 2p, but most of the supporters of Fairfield UK are telling me they haven't seen it at all.
You make the point. This isn't you know the guy running the petrol station at the end of the road. This is on a higher level.
Absolutely right. It's further up the fuel supply chain, wholesalers, and of course we just heard the EU saying that they're cutting reliance on imports of oil and diesel from Russia, and of course the speculators are taking advantage of that. This volatility is manna for heaven for them to push up prices even further. And pump prices will go up further, Colin. We're going to see them at £1.90 for diesel on average. And don't forget, some garages across the country, especially in those wonderful motorway service stations, are well over £2 already. The point is the government can do something about it. And don't forget, they're wallowing in a shed load of VAT at the moment because of these high prices.
Obviously, Howard, you know, and you tell people whenever you get the opportunity that we are left with this ludicrous situation where, let's face it, what is really for many people a staple of life. If you're you've got a small business, if you're running the kids to school, you live in a rural area, fuel is a staple of life. And the government's taking 45p in a pound in tax. People are left with a tremendous sense of impotence, Howard. They're absolutely indignant about this, but what can they do?
Well, the most important thing is, from my point of view, sign up to fairfielduk.com, please, and we will actually put the pressure on the government. I'm working very closely at the moment with backbench MPs, people like Robert Halfon and Craig McKinley, and I've said that to you before. They're brilliant MPs who care about the motorists. They're really in touch with drivers. And it's good to see at the weekend that Boris Johnson did actually say, we've got to do something about this. And I've been asked by the Department of Transport to come up with an idea of the pump watch idea and how it would work. And I reckon it should be 2 stages. One, a voluntary process, a kite mark on a garage forecourts to say we adhere to fair and transparent pricing when oil prices change. But if they don't adhere to it, they wouldn't have that kite mark, and drivers can make a choice of not going to fill up at that garage. And maybe we can put pressure on the fuel supply chain to be more fair and transparent. And I repeat, most garage owners, most of them, independent garage owners, are held in a contractual relationship further up the fuel supply chain they can't get out of, and they're working on very, very small margins.
In terms of the politics of this, do you think there's an element of this conversation which we struggle with, which is that a lot of the policymakers live in London, they don't drive, or if they drive, they let somebody else drive for them, or if you're maybe doing a nice corporate job, you're flying, maybe you've got a nice Tesla that the company paid for, you're not filling up that diesel charabanc, are you?
No, you're absolutely right. And the metropolitan elite, the people who make the decisions for people outside, particularly out of the big cities, do not understand what poor public transport means and why you need your diesel and petrol chariot to get around. You have no choice. In a poll we've just done, about 7,000 responded. Out of that, about 900 explain they have to have their car to go to medical appointments, things like chemotherapy or even dialysis. Something like 90 of those people are now telling me they're not going to appointments because they can't afford to fill up their car to get to the hospital or to the medical appointment. Now, this is getting stupid. And as you know, Fairfield UK is mainly backed by the Road Haulage Association. And we're seeing members of the Road Haulage Association, their fuel costs are way above 50 to 60% of their overall costs. They can't invest in cleaner engines or cleaner vehicles. They can't actually invest in training, recruiting HGV drivers. It's a complete mess. The government can get on top of this and do it now. And I don't know why they're sitting back on their backsides and not doing anything about it.
Howard, at what point, I don't want to be accused, either of us to be accused of stirring the pot here, but at what point do people like the hauliers you're talking about say, actually, we've had enough, we don't have to keep taking this, we do have some leverage, we'll do what we did, what was it, 15, 20 years ago, we'll take our convoy of lorries and we'll block the M1?
Well, I don't believe in that sort of approach. I think the best thing, because you alienate the people you're trying to support by doing that, people getting to work, you're blocking. Look at Extinction Rebellion and people like that. But there is I'm under a lot of pressure from people, our supporters, to do exactly that, Colin. I'm getting close to actually tipping over the edge and maybe backing that, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, gosh, that raises. I mean, that is a real moral quandary, isn't it? Howard, so good to talk to you, and thanks for all the work you're doing. Howard Cox there. Lynn May is alongside me. As Howard Cox makes clear there are people who need the car for urgent medical appointments, and they are not making them.
Well, initially I did support the windfall tax, but if that tax is, getting spaffed up the wall, he said it, the gentleman earlier said it, you said it, they are wallowing in VAT. Why can they not lower that for a time-specific period so we can see some of that to assist drivers? I don't understand how comfortably the government's saying, well, we're making loads off of you driving around while all of us struggle. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think you said it earlier, but there's just too much taxation at the moment.
I'd like to see, and maybe it's something we can work up for later in the week, international comparisons on this. It feels like that, 45p out of a pound of what you put into your fuel tank going to the tax man feels high. Obviously, it's high compared to Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or wherever. Is it high, Lynn, compared to France or Canada? I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be. I know you probably disagree with me here, but I do think we're moving. Well, the EU's moving too close to just a complete ban on, Russian imports, because we're going to suffer. I understand the political landscape of this war, but it's us who's going to feel it.
Yeah, which introduced a different topic altogether, doesn't it? Well, a bit of the gas question, but we've ventilated that plenty, and we will do again, I'm sure. For now, Lynn, thanks very much indeed. Another Conservative MP submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister this afternoon. John Stevenson, MP for Carlisle since 2010, said he was deeply disappointed by rule-breaking parties in Downing Street. His submission takes the total number of those publicly calling on Mr Johnson to resign to 28. A confidence vote in Boris Johnson's leadership will be held, as you know, if 54 letters are received from Conservative MPs. Let's turn to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who joins me now. Hi to you, Darren. She's not written a letter, at least not that we know, but Andrea Ledsen's intervention, critical comments of the Prime Minister, really struck me because she was seen as one of the great tribunes of Brexit, somebody who would be very much on side with the Prime Minister. And when she starts coming out and joining the Greek chorus of dissent, you start to scratch your head a bit, don't you?
Yeah, I think this is the real problem in many ways for Boris Johnson, Colin, which is essentially that there is no one group moving against the Prime Minister. It seems that these are very disparate people from different sections of the party, different sections of the country. You're right in saying Andrea Leadsom. Now, we don't know whether she's written a letter or not, but she certainly expressed her discontent with the Prime Minister, calling his behaviour and what happened during the Partygate scandal as unacceptable failures of leadership of the Prime Minister. But you add to that some Conservative MPs in southern England who are maybe in Lib Dem marginal seats, where the Lib Dems are the second largest party. Some of those are pretty uncomfortable and have come out against the Prime Minister. Then there are all kind of one nation Conservatives, those that have never really liked Boris Johnson's kind of leadership style or indeed the direction he's taken the party. And add into that a couple of others who may well have lost their jobs. Andrea Leadsom does fall into that camp as well under Boris Johnson. You start to get a sense that there is a bit of a movement, quite a strong movement now against the Prime Minister. Events are moving pretty quickly. It only seemed like a week ago in the wake of the Sue Gray report that the Prime Minister may well have passed that moment of danger, but that certainly doesn't feel like we're in that position now. Far from it, Colin. There is a real possibility that the Prime Minister may face a vote of confidence as early as next week. Now, the man who knows this, and there only is one person about how many letters have actually been submitted, is Sir Graham Brady. He is not going to tell us this week. He only reveals that to the Prime Minister when Parliament is sitting. But it is entirely possible we've even met that threshold already. It's certainly going to be quite a tricky couple of weeks for the Prime Minister. As Alex Ferguson put it, squeaky bum time for Boris Johnson.
Darren, thanks very much indeed. Darren McCaffrey. Lynn May's alongside me. Lynn May, enough footballing metaphors for now, if you don't mind. Prime Minister was out of the woods, it appeared, but he might be going back into the thicket.
Yeah, I don't know why everyone's saying that the Sue Gray report is, not as damning. Why is it not as damning? I read through it and, it was a full-on party. People were sick, people were fighting, and he's misled Parliament, misled the nation by saying, it was something. He played it down massively. And for the MPs that's coming out now with this vote of no confidence letters, I find that to be slightly disingenuous because everyone knew what was going on, let's be honest. I understand that constituents may now be putting pressure on MPs, but I just think Boris as a whole, there's too many issues now in terms of the ministerial code, him bending the rules to suit himself.
Do you think a lot of the people who voted for Boris Johnson care that much about the ministerial code? Don't they care more actually about the way the country's governed? They're not that bothered about Partygate, I would suggest to you. They're far more bothered about what we were just talking about, the fact it's now 100 quid to fill up the average diesel car.
No, but it goes hand in hand. If I work for a company and there's company policy, if the company policy changes, it trickles down through to the culture, and the culture does lay the groundwork for how the country is governed, and that's the issue here. And, you know, people saying, oh, he got Brexit done, he's got us through COVID. It's gone now. What are you doing now?
If not him, then who?
Oh, we were talking about this earlier, but that cannot be a good enough reason to keep him on.
Oh, it's quite a good reason.
Really?
About who runs the country.
But the integrity is going down. I think if we have a general election anytime soon, we're going to pay for it.
Lynn May, for now, thanks very much indeed. GBNews has been told that plans to send up to 1,500 asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire have been put on hold because of a legal challenge from the area's local authority. I'll just read you some of the emails we've been getting on this. We've got Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, who's filed an amazing report on this from RAF Linton-on-Ouse, and it's provoked a real mailbag from you. Here's a flavour of some of them. Dave, I told you about earlier, I'll repeat his email, it was interesting. There would be less of a problem if in Yorkshire, if these people were detained within the site. Why should asylum seekers be free to wander around where they like? What about the safety of local people? Brian, let's have some sovereign land in Rwanda, then we can hold our courts over there, send the immigrants immediately over there, then send the defending lawyers over there, send the judges over there, and let's deal with the applications there and not here. And Elizabeth, I could understand the Yorkshire villagers' anxiety if large numbers of asylum seekers arrive. However, why can't we put them in these places, provide all that they need and process them quickly so they do not need to roam about looking for things to do? I'll be talking to Mark White about his report from Linton-on-Ouse very shortly. In the meantime, here's the weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather outlook. As we head towards the Jubilee weekend, the weather is turning a lot drier, and for most of us, warming up a little bit as well. High pressure is trying to move in. It is going to be a slow process, however, and for the time being, this low is sitting right over us. It's been providing heavy showers for the past couple of days, and still a few lively downpours around this evening, particularly over eastern England and southeast Scotland. The showers should be fading here. We'll keep some cloud and some outbreaks of rain feeding into eastern Scotland. Wet weather across Northern Ireland will clear and push into Wales and northwest England through the early hours. As skies clear in many places, temperatures tumble. A chilly one for Wednesday morning. Temperatures in some rural parts of the southeast may not be far off freezing as we start June. There will be some June sunshine around, though, in the morning. Not so much over the Midlands. Quite a lot of cloud here and outbreaks of rain. Should brighten up through the day for Wales, sunny spells for Northern Ireland, and not as many showers to come tomorrow across Scotland, and by and large a fine day in southwest England. It will again be northern and eastern England that see showers, again some of them heavy, and again temperatures mostly around the mid-teens, but warming up a little bit across the south. 19, 20 Celsius is possible. Still a few showers then through Wednesday evening, but look, they are fading, they're disappearing, leading into what will by and large be a fine day on Bank Holiday Thursday for the Jubilee. Most places, yes, maybe starting a little fresh, perhaps a little mist and fog here and there, but plenty of sunny spells for England, Wales and Scotland. It will cloud over in Northern Ireland. We are going to see some showers pushing in here, particularly into the west. And showers can't be completely ruled out for Northern England and southern Scotland. But for most places, Thursday, a bit warmer. Temperatures in the south over 20 Celsius with quite a bit of sunshine. There's that high pressure trying to topple in, bringing drier weather for most, but still the threat of these weather fronts providing some showers across the south.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
every morning from 6 o'clock. We'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, some breaking news within the last few minutes. There's been an update from the Home Office on plans to send migrants from the UK to Rwanda. This regards timing. Let's turn to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's in Linton-on-Ouse in North Yorkshire, from where he's filed a really thought-provoking piece about asylum seekers being effectively sent in the midst of a pretty small and close-knit community, they mark. But a fortnight for the Rwandan operation to start. That's what we're looking at.
Yes, that's right. GB News can confirm that the Home Office intends to send the first asylum seekers for processing in Rwanda on June the 14th. In terms of the numbers, we don't have a breakdown of the numbers, although we were told a week or two ago that the first 100 asylum seekers had been given interim notice of a potential to send them to Rwanda, that had been whittled down in recent days to around 50, but no confirmation that that is the final number. But the Home Office telling us that these notices have now been served and that these asylum seekers have been told, this first group, that they will be on a flight to Rwanda on June the 14th. But the Home Office also, of course, very aware that this is likely to set in train a number of court challenges, and that could last some time. But that's their intention anyway. They're desperate, of course, to steal back some momentum in this. Yet again today, Colin, we've had 8 boats coming across the English Channel, some 280 would-be asylum seekers on those boats, including 50 Albanians. Quite what war they were fleeing, we don't know, but 50 Albanians, according to our local producer in Dover, on these boats, and they will now enter the asylum system, and that's 280 more rooms that will have to be found for them. We've been reporting today that 30,000 hotel rooms are being requisitioned by the Home Office every single day. And in addition to that, council houses across the country are being used. And here in Linton-on-Ouse, plans to house at least 1,500 asylum seekers in the old air base, just 100 yards from where I'm standing.
Mark, people up and down the land, particularly those living close by disused Ministry of Defence properties, will be looking nervously over their shoulder. But there's bewilderment, I think, about the idea that there you are, it's a small, tight-knit community. You've got the drone up to film and show just how small a community we're talking about here. And these asylum seekers are going to be in Linton-on-Ouse, on the site of the old air base there. What will they do to stop going out of their heads with boredom? Why, indeed, ask a number of our correspondents, will they be allowed to leave the detention centre, if that's what it is, anyway? Will they be allowed to leave it and move freely around the village and beyond?
Yeah, they will have the freedom to leave the air base if that's what they choose to do. It is the way in which refugees, would-be refugees, are treated in this country. The government does not want to go down the road of treating them as criminals until their actual status has been determined. If they are genuine refugees, then locking them up is seen as something that would raise some serious issues in terms of their human rights. But you're right about this village. It's a tiny village. I'm just going to pop out of the way just for a second, Colin, just to give you an idea. What's behind me at the moment is the village hall. Looks like it was a former church. The village hall. They had a post office here today. That's the village hall. If we swing round, this is the main street. It's a tiny street. Every 2 or 3 minutes a car passes on the street. To the left-hand side, where you can see a for sale sign, I don't know if that's linked to the plans for the RAF base, there is the shop, the one shop that this village has, a little grocer's store, and that's it. There are no amenities in this village. It's right next to the RAF base, and although according to the Home Office they're going to lay a couple of buses on, small buses, to take asylum seekers that want to go to York for the day there, most of them won't have much in the way of money anyway. A lot of them, it's believed, of course, will probably just wander into the village, and that's where there are some genuine concerns about what these young bored men might get up to. It only takes a few bad apples to cause some really serious problems in this village, so they're very concerned.
Mark, the plan's been delayed, we're told, successfully by legal action from the local authority. It's a reminder, isn't it, that the law cuts both ways. I mean, very often I'm up in arms, many of our viewers and listeners are up in arms about the fact that the lawfare, some people call it, is used to delay the deportation of often dangerous criminals. But sometimes the law can be used to the advantage of people who actually don't feel the government's handling asylum well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of reasons, I think, for this delay, this pause in the introduction of these asylum seekers to this former airbase. The Home Office tell us that because of this potential impending legal action by the local authority here, they're taking a time out to consider some of the legal points that the local authority is making. Also, I think they're running into some logistical problems in just either the facilities or the way in which they're going to get the first people here to the base. So that means that they're on pause for a while. We don't think it's going to be too long, and they have said in a statement that absolutely it is still their intention to use this base. They see it as vital in trying to address an unsustainable situation, which is 30,000 hotel rooms being used every single day at a cost of almost £5 million a day. That, they say, understandably, is unsustainable. They need to come up with other solutions. They have former MOD sites, other government buildings that could be repurposed for this use. But obviously, in a village like this, a very quiet, tiny village like this, it's very controversial. Nobody wants to see their village population more than double with a bunch of potentially bored young men hanging around the streets here.
Mark White in North Yorkshire. Mark, thanks very much indeed. Coming up today, we'll debate the big topic, or one of the big topics of the day. Was it a mistake to invite Harry and Meghan to the Jubilee celebrations? First, latest news headlines with Polly.
Colin, thank you. Well, as you've just been hearing in that breaking news that Colin was bringing you, the Home Office has confirmed the first flights carrying migrants from the UK to Rwanda will take place on the 14th of June. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, says the plan will clamp down on people smugglers exploiting those trying to seek asylum in the UK. That is a breaking news story. More details, of course, as we get it. In the meantime, the Chancellor says the plan unveiled last week to help with the cost of living crisis will make an enormous difference for the most vulnerable families. The consumer group Which says over 10% of people have skipped meals due to rising food prices. They say surging living costs mean 57% of people are being forced to make adjustments, including cutting back on essentials, taking out loans or borrowing from friends and family. The president of the EU Council says the ban on Russian oil by the EU will cripple Vladimir Putin's war machine. The EU has agreed to stop 90% of oil imports by the end of this year. 10% of imports will be temporarily exempt, so Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic can still have access. Ukraine, meanwhile, says Russian forces do have control of around half of the eastern city of Severodonetsk in the Luhansk capital. The head of the city's administration told state TV that Ukrainian troops are holding out with a fierce fight against Russia's all-out assault, but much of the city's infrastructure is facing heavy bombardment and thousands of civilians are trapped. Here, TUI Airways have announced they're cancelling 6 flights a day from Manchester Airport until the end of next month. EasyJet and British Airways are also cancelling flights each day, while passengers at Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester and Bristol are reporting long delays. The aviation industry is suffering from staff shortages after thousands were let go during the pandemic. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News and Brazier's back in just a bit.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Quick look at the markets for you. The pound is 1.261 to the dollar, the pound's 1.175 to the euro, and the price of gold currently standing at £1,460.67. Took me a second there, but I got it in the end.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Nearly 20 to 6, our top stories for you this afternoon. The Home Office has confirmed in the last few minutes the first migrants to be sent to Rwanda will board a flight from the UK on the 14th of June. It follows GB News being told that plans to send hundreds of asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire are being delayed following a legal challenge by the local authority. Thousands of holidaymakers have been left in limbo at airports across the UK again today as more flights were cancelled ahead of the bank holiday. Airline TUI says staff shortages are forcing them to cancel half a dozen flights a day until the end of June. Some 2 million people set to fly over the bank holiday in one of the busiest periods so far this year. And another Conservative MP submitted a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson, making him the 28th Conservative to publicly call for the Prime Minister to go over the Partygate scandal. This is John Stevenson, the MP for Carlisle, says he's been deeply disappointed by the rule-breaking parties in Number 10 and the Prime Minister's response to them in Parliament. Time for a debate. On yesterday's show, I asked one of Britain's most highly regarded royal correspondents, Angela Levin, about Buckingham Palace's decision to invite Harry and Meghan to the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. I asked Angela a simple question. Will the Sussexes behave? And will the Palace regret their invitation? This is what she said, quick as a flash.
No.
Brilliant. If only all guests were that pithy. If only, indeed. Well, she said the Palace will rue their decision, she said, because Harry and Meghan won't be able to avoid the temptation to hijack the event for their own self-promoting purposes. So today I'm asking, was it a mistake to invite Harry and Meghan to the Jubilee celebrations? We're joined by Benjamin Loughnane, Research Fellow at the Bow Group, and the political commentator Lynn May, who's been with me throughout the show. Benjamin, we'll start with you. Mistake or not?
Well, I think it shows extraordinary grace of the Queen, and it's very in her character to have invited them in spite of, how they bad-mouthed her effectively and been actually quite disloyal to her, and tried to steal the spotlight over the past few years, certainly in the wake of Prince Philip's death, as we remember last year. So it shows an extraordinary amount of grace that she's extended that invitation. But the question is, should they have accepted that invitation? And was the invitation really just a token of a gesture of goodwill more than anything? But really, should they come? I don't think so. I think that they shouldn't take the spotlight away from the Queen. It's her day, and they should have one day off being the media starlets.
Lynn May, do you think Harry and Meghan will turn up accompanied by a Netflix camera operator or two?
Yes, they won't miss the opportunity. For them to not come, I think the press will criticise them either way, and I understand why they would, because on one hand you have Meghan who's like, I don't really like Britain, friends told me not to marry Harry, the media hates me, but then she enjoys the continuous attention.
It's a marketable commodity. It's not about enjoyment, it's about banking it.
And I think the two go hand in hand. But at the end of the day, I think we can all say there's that one dodgy family member that we have to put up with around Christmas dinner. So when it comes to family, I can understand why they've extended that invitation. And we can't expect the Queen and the royal family to just completely cut them off, curtail them from anything. But I don't particularly like the route that they've gone down. I'm not a fan of them, are you?
Well, no, not really. But look, I think it's a lose-lose situation. If the Queen hadn't invited them, that'd be the headline. Now, if they'd been invited and they'd turned down the invitation, we'd all be going, oh, how ungrateful of them to turn it down. There's not really a win in this situation, but then that's because they've made their own bed over the past couple of years with the way that they've behaved. The reason people respond to them in this way is because we expect them to be up to no good. The best thing they can do is come and keep their head down and don't try and steal the spotlight, don't try and steal the headlines, let it be the Queen's Day and then go back to America.
That's the only thing that annoys me. It is going to overshadow a brilliant time for the royal family. And
no, it's not. We mustn't use this word.
Do you not
overshadow.
think?
It's not going to overshadow. It's not going to overshadow.
Look at the headlines.
Great piece, Benjamin, by Tina Brown in the Sunday Times magazine, in which she said, this is the former editor of Tatler, New Yorker, Vanity Fair, knows what she's talking about, or, some interesting ideas, and says that the long-term, the strategy from the Palace has to be to try and pull these couple of desperados closer.
Yeah.
On the one hand, they are using up their ammunition. There's only so many disclosures they make, and every time you let them into the fold, you give them a bit more ammunition. But long-term, they need to be brought back into the bosom of the family.
Yeah, it's the old thing of, united we stand, divided we fall. It's going to be bad for them and for the royal family if there's no unity, especially once the Queen dies, because she's holding a lot of this together. The moment that she's gone and it's down to Charles and William and so on and so forth, that sort of disunity in the family is going to become a lot more to the surface. And I think when you have William as king, certainly that will be a huge problem if Harry's over in America and there's that huge discord between the two sides.
Lynn, there's a possibility that there is no reconciliation, and actually then we just end up with these twin poles. We end up with the British royal family exemplifying all the things it's always exemplified, and some people won't like that. They'll find it archaic. And then you'll have the Sussexes who will exemplify a certain Californian mindset. And there'll be some people who won't like that. But the people who like it more will be in America, and the people who dislike California will be here in the UK, and never the twain will meet.
Well, in order to have that unity that you just talking about. I'm disappointed in Harry. I think it is his job to assert some of his masculinity and say, do you know what? There have been problems that I'm not happy about with the family. We've got it off our chest. Let's move forward. Because if there is huge disdain for your family, you would essentially cut them off. If they've really cut you that deep, you're going to cut them off. You have no intention to. He misses the Queen. He said that before. They keep on coming back. So create that unity. Harry needs to lead the way in his family and, quite frankly, put Meghan in her place.
This is somebody, Harry, who talks about his therapist calling your therapist. I'm not sure he's capable now of re-entering a world that most Britons recognise, Benjamin.
He's not massively popular here anymore. I think his popularity has declined since he married Meghan. Hers is even lower than his, in fact. But I do think that, you know, the thing about Harry is, you know, he needs to keep his family close, because at the end of the day, the people who are always there for you when things go wrong are your family, and distancing himself from his family is only going to do damage to him in the long term, especially if things ever go wrong with Meghan, and let's hope that they don't, but if it ever were to go south, who would he turn to? He'd be all alone in the world.
OK, just final... I'm sure neither of you can make it as brief as Angela Levin made it yesterday, but Lynn, do you think they will find it impossible, the Sussexes, to pop their heads above the parapet and garner a bit of publicity? I mean...
I think Harry won't, but Meghan will, and he will take her lead like he always does.
Yeah.
OK, Benjamin?
I agree with that completely. I think the best thing they can do is keep their heads down, but I don't think Meghan will allow them to.
Benjamin, thanks for coming in. Lynn, thanks for your thoughts. We're going to move on to this story. In China, there are live crab vending machines. In Singapore, you can fork out for mashed potato pots. Now, day trippers in Southsea, Portsmouth, can enjoy pizzas 24 hours a day from a new robotic vending machine, which is situated in a seafront car park. The pizzas, they'll be served up in under 4 minutes. There's already a machine at Brighton Station. Others are in the pipeline. Some locals, including, well, it says here, medics, are concerned that pizza on demand 24/7 may send the wrong message and contribute to the obesity crisis, which I think is slightly overblown, isn't it, really, the one vending machine. Let's turn to William Jack, a founder of this particular venture, Pizza Rebellion. Welcome to you. I think it's a cracking idea. Technically, how does it work?
Yeah, so we make the pizza basically. So our background is food before this sort of concept. So you know, what we've done is we've made a product which we think is market leading, is healthy. I'd say once it goes into Portsmouth, will probably be the healthiest pizza in Portsmouth. All pure ingredients, lots of local ingredients, and yeah. So basically, we've got a really clever system that stores. It's like a chill heat system. So so we make it, we pop it in these special boxes. Yeah. It goes into a categorised refrigerated system, and then when the customer orders, 4 minutes into a really clever jet pulsed oven, and we've got big elements on top. We've got big motors, so that gives it real authentic finish. And within 4 minutes, you've got your pizza authentic, beautiful, rebellious thing.
Yeah, so what you haven't got is the robotic hand extending and dropping bits of mozzarella cheese on it. It's pre-formed. It's in the fridge inside the box, and it comes out of the fridge and it goes into the oven and hey presto. How big is the range given that then?
Yeah, so basically what we've created sort of like rather than your normal pizza, we've created sort of our rebellious sort of toppings, and we've given them a fun edge. And we've got a few, like our top sellers is like one called the Notorious PIG. That's got like vintage cheddar, ham hock, pulled ham hock, fresh sliced pineapple, lovely Roman bacon. And it's all on like a wood-fired base as well. So we basically pre-cook the wood-fired base, and then pop it in the box. It goes through the refrigerated process into the oven, 4 minutes. And there you go.
It depends how busy it is as to how often you've got to refill it. But, I mean, will the 24-hour nature of this, William, really be an appeal? People know if they drive to this car park at, 3, 4 in the morning, they'll be able to get a hot meal. And to what extent is that going to annoy the locals?
Well, I think where it's located isn't going to annoy the locals because it's not near a residential area. Like we're by Chichester train station, that one, our best-selling time is sort of between 12 o'clock and 5 in the morning. You know, there's a whole nother life that goes on at that time. And, the thing is like, it's no one wants to work at that time. You know, no one wants to work between sort of midnight and 7 in the morning, but people want to eat pizza. So what we can give them is a really good craft product within 4 minutes.
William Jack, it's a great piece of entrepreneurial innovation, and we wish you well, and thanks for talking about it. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Lynn May, alongside me. Would you have one of their pizzas? Of course. It'd be good.
Yeah. I think people that are critical of it, probably there was a similar group of people that were critical towards drive-through restaurants. What's the difference? I do think if it does well, it will pick up. It's about convenience. It's about wanting everything to be 24 hours. We're heading down that road, so why not?
Why not? Exactly. I agree. Now, as the UK gears up for a weekend of celebration for the Diamond Jubilee? Platinum Jubilee? Many of you have been getting creative with decorations for your homes, possessions and indeed even pets, sending us pictures throughout the show, and we'd like to share some of your enthusiasms. John Mills has gone for a simple but effective. It's very simple, but I think quite elegant, apart from the fact it blocks the window, obviously, over the front of his house. Kay Miller's gone to town on both the front and back garden. This is better than what we had in the last hour, isn't it?
A bit more effort here.
Yeah, I think the modern word is curated. We've curated these images better. She's also dressed up. She also dressed up her dog. Don't know what the dog's called. Lorraine Sumner has put up cutouts of the Queen and the late Duke of Edinburgh. Not sure where that is. And as you know, Stonehenge has had the Queen's portraits projected.
Oh, wow.
On. Have you not seen that?
No.
Well, I'll tell you about this, if you'll bear with me. Yes, it's been projected, the Queen at different stages of her nearly 70-year-long reign. The local druids complained and said it was offensive.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I just think for a lot of people that like Stonehenge, it's a spiritual sort of place, isn't it? So they may be a bit offended by... Of course, it's not defacing, but in their spiritual world, it may be seen as that.
Lynn May, that's the joy of having a studio guest. I never know what you're going to say. You genuinely took me aback then. Up next, it's Jubes & Co. Beverly Turner in charge today. Here in the studio, she's going to just whet your appetite now. Beverly, hi.
Thank you, Colin. I'm going to go straight home and put some flags on my house. That's what I know after watching that. Now, we've got a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about the state of our emergency services, the ambulances, the police. I'd love to hear your experiences because they are in a bit of a mess. We're going to be discussing the public order bill, and we have the fantastic Silky Carlo here from Big Brother Watch. If there is anybody you need to listen to on that topic, it is Silky. We're also going to be looking at the very divisive issue of how much data police should take from rape complainants, and on a slight gear change, how to know if you're officially posh 2022 style. What are the status symbols that you must have?
Give us one, Bev. Tell us one.
Do you have a blue tick, Colin? Yeah. Do you have a Twitter blue tick?
But that's because we're journos, isn't it?
Well, apparently not. Apparently it means that we're officially posh. I mean, lots of people I know have a blue tick who are not posh. But English sparkling wine, Jubilee weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, good. That's quite a good identifier, Bev. Thanks very much indeed. Lynn May is with me to round off the show, and we've got some emails because there has been a mailbag today. Mark White's original journalism coming from Linton-on-Ouse and reflecting on the numbers of asylum seekers who are going to be repositioned to a sleepy village in North Yorkshire has got a lot of you emailing in. And also Harry and Meghan. This from Marilyn. It certainly is right, says Marilyn, to have the Duke and Duchess of Sussex at the Queen's Jubilee. It's about time the media left them alone. It certainly is the fault of the media that you keep them in the spotlight. Marilyn, you may have a point. Linda says, no. That couple should stay away from our royals. They are toxic. Meanwhile, Kim says they should never have been any part of the Queen's Jubilee as they have disgraced the monarchy. And finally, Rob says they wanted to get away from the limelight for a more private life. Why do we keep seeing them on the news, says Rob. Lynn May, sometimes it's easy just to position the Sussexes in the midst of the culture wars. Maybe sometimes it's more simple than that. Maybe actually there is Harry, wants to celebrate his granny's Jubilee. Can't we just...
And they probably get along quite well now, to be honest with you. Yes, I think the Queen, as gracious as she is, she's probably put what Harry's done behind her. They want to move on. all families have family feuds, and I think we shouldn't be so critical of them. We can still not be a fan, we don't have to be a fan of them, but I think they're a part of it.
OK, Lynn May, great to have you on the show today. Thanks very much indeed. Bev Turner's next, do stand by.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather outlook. As we head towards the Jubilee weekend, the weather is turning a lot drier, and for most of us, warming up a little bit as well. High pressure is trying to move in. It is going to be a slow process, however, and for the time being, this low is sitting right over us. It's been providing heavy showers for the past couple of days, and still a few lively downpours around this evening, particularly over eastern England and southeast Scotland. The showers should be fading here. We'll keep some cloud and some outbreaks of rain feeding into eastern Scotland. Wet weather across Northern Ireland will clear and push into Wales and northwest England through the early hours. As skies clear in many places, temperatures tumble. A chilly one for Wednesday morning. Temperatures in some rural parts of the southeast may not be far off freezing as we start June. There will be some June sunshine around, though, in the morning. Not so much over the Midlands. Quite a lot of cloud here and outbreaks of rain. Should brighten up through the day for Wales, sunny spells for Northern Ireland, and not as many showers to come tomorrow across Scotland. And by and large, a fine day in southwest England. It will again be northern and eastern England that see showers, again, some of them heavy. And again, temperatures mostly around the mid-teens, but warming up a little bit across the south. 19, 20 Celsius is possible. Still a few showers then through Wednesday evening, but look, they are fading, they're disappearing, leading into what will by and large be a fine day on Bank Holiday Thursday for the Jubilee. Most places, yes, maybe starting a little fresh, perhaps a little mist and fog here and there, but plenty of sunny spells for England, Wales and Scotland. It will cloud over in Northern Ireland. We are going to see some showers pushing in here, particularly into the west. And showers can't be completely ruled out for Northern England and southern Scotland. But for most places, Thursday, a bit warmer. Temperatures in the south over 20 Celsius with quite a bit of sunshine. There's that high pressure trying to topple in, bringing drier weather for most, but still the threat of these weather fronts providing some showers across the south.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays